Hi everyone, this is the Chrissy B Show, a program aimed at looking after our mental health and well-being. For the parents watching, are you aware of your child's mental state? Now, sometimes it's very easy to spot an issue, but not always. And according to the Mental Health Foundation, mental health problems affect about 1 in 10 children and young people. They include depression, anxiety, and conduct disorder, and are often a direct response to what is happening in their lives. Alarmingly, however, 70% of children and young people who experience a mental health problem have not had appropriate interventions at a sufficiently early age. They also say that most children grow up mentally healthy, but surveys suggest that more children and young people have problems with their mental health today than 30 years ago. That's probably because of changes in the way we live now and how that affects the experiences of growing up. So let me tell you about my guest today. We have parenting and family coach Sharon Lawton, who'll be sharing the signs to spot whether your child has low self-esteem, and we'll be giving tips on how to raise a child's self-esteem. And we also have clinical psychologist Dr Nihara Krause, who'll be telling us about children and eating disorders. We'll also be seeing the real-life stories of 2 children who manage a problem they are going through in different ways. One has severe allergies, but that hasn't stopped him from leading a relatively normal life. And the other shares how he copes with anxiety. We have Daniel Shine with a healthy and easy recipe for nut butter, which is great for children and adults alike. We have an activity great to keep kids active and occupied, which is great for their mental health. And that's the High Line at the Rock Reef Activity Centre. And I'll be sharing 6 things my parents did that helped me to have a high self-esteem. And just before I move on, I'd like to read out a comment we received on Twitter, because we do love to read your comments out on this show. And this one's from NECBT team, and they say, "We are so happy and proud to see mental health have its very own show. Amazing work." So thank you so much for your comments there. And if you would like to comment and give us some feedback about this program, or if you have any ideas, you can tweet us at Chrissy B Show or leave a message on our Facebook page, The Chrissy B Show. So now it's time to go over to Sharon Lawton to talk about self-esteem issues. Welcome to the show, Sharon.
Hi, Chris.
How are you doing?
Yeah, very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. So you are a parent yourself, so you know quite a bit about self-esteem in your own family and how what's worked for you. But can you tell us, first of all, for the parents that are watching, how can you spot that a child has low self-esteem?
Yeah, self-esteem, there's so much out there at the moment in parenting articles and books. It seems to be everywhere we turn at the moment where self-esteem is concerned, and the buzzword in schools and, you know, sort of resilience. But being able to spot self-esteem isn't always as obvious as we might think. Self-esteem is the lens through which we view the world. It's sort of in everything that we do. So you can't see self-esteem, but self-esteem's there every time we look in the mirror. We can't hear self-esteem. Self-esteem's that little critical voice in our head that tells us whether we're good enough or not, whether we can or not. And we can't touch self-esteem, but self-esteem's in our body language, in the way we hold ourselves, eye contact, all of that stuff. So it's woven into everything that we do. So where spotting self-esteem is concerned, there are obviously a lot of factors that might contribute to that, and we'll come to that later on. But sometimes, well, more often than not, children will act out their feelings. And we might see a child who becomes very self-depreciating and self-critical, or very critical of others. Oh, okay. Sometimes it might manifest itself through sort of low value of self-worth in the choices that they make around friendships, or the choices they might make in a particular situation. So, for example, if a child has a low opinion of themselves, then their chances are they don't like or value themselves very much, and that might be at a conscious level or even an unconscious level. And so if we don't like or value ourselves, then we're more likely to put ourselves at risk. So we tend to see sometimes in teenagers or adolescents more sort of risky behaviour. Because if we like and value ourselves, we're not going to put ourselves at risk, are we? Because
can you give us an example? What kind of thing maybe would a child do, a risky kind of thing they would do?
Okay, so sometimes it manifests itself through things like self-harm. So that would be sort of an imploding, more of a suppressed type of type of feeling. things that are more sort of outward might be more destructive behaviours. So they might be very aggressive, or they might be they might fail at school. They might start sort of
maybe not even
going
doing
to
their
school,
homework,
not doing homework, give up, feel that they can't do the work, or they don't even try. So yeah, lots and lots of different things that it can manifest itself.
So what can parents do then if they do spot these signs? Because it can be, some situations I know are very delicate, and we'll get onto the more serious stuff later, like the eating disorders, but in terms of sort of general things that parents can do at home.
So self-esteem is basically sort of shaped in childhood by the way that influential adults respond to us and to our achievements and things that we actually do. So that's not just parents, that's obviously also any influential adults. So extended family, friendship groups, teachers, anybody that has an influential role in a child's life can affect a child's self-esteem. And none of us have a healthy I don't like to talk self-esteem in high and low. I prefer it to be sort of healthy or a little bit wobbly. So none of us really have a healthy self-esteem all of the time. It can be knocked at any stage. So I would say that even if your child isn't showing signs of a wobbly self-esteem, to be always conscious of the things that we are doing that can influence whether a child has a healthy self-esteem and a good sense of self-worth, or one that's a little bit wobbly. So things like the way that we talk about ourselves in front of our children will influence that. The way that we talk about our children in front of them, we might think they're not listening, but they're always listening. The way that we talk about other people will start to shape their values of the world. It is very much the lens through which we view the world. You know, some people are viewing it through a very narrow lens and see the world as a very sort of aggressive place, and other people will be looking through a much wider lens and will see sort of a much bigger picture. So the way that we talk to our children has a fundamental effect, and the things that we're doing, the times that we're spending with them, every little is sort of a drip, drip, drip effect, and looking out for little ways to increase that.
The kids just pick up on everything, don't they?
Absolutely.
So you've got some lovely things on the table for us here. I love it when you bring your little props and stuff in. So can you go through all these lovely things with us and why they're good for
Absolutely. Okay, so adding to what we were just talking about, sort of ideas and things that parents can do. And it always starts back with us because we're modelling to our children all of the time. So we need to be good role models. And when I'm working with families, it's often the change needs to start with us. So we need to be working on our own self-esteem so we can model good strategies for them.
Makes sense.
So affirmations, positive affirmations are really good because the way that we talk about ourselves gives messages to other people, non-verbally and verbally, about how we feel about ourselves and the value that we put on ourselves. So if we're often using very critical self-talk, then that can make a big difference. And it almost gives other people permission to do the same, because if we don't talk about ourselves nicely, then
no one else will.
Absolutely. So it is sometimes about reframing the words that we use. So to do that, I often I use this is our little friend here, and this is our critical parrot. And I know you have another guest on the show tonight talking about sort of psychology, etc. And this actually comes from a lady called Dr Iona Bonniwell, and I use a lot of her work when I'm working with families. And what she does, and I use it as a model because I use lots of metaphor when I'm working with family, is that we can think about our critical voice, because all of us have critical voice, a little bit like a parrot sitting on our shoulder telling us how to interpret a situation. And that sort of differentiates the thoughts that we're having, and it doesn't become our identity, so we can start to separate. And once we start to sort of personify that, we can think about actually how that parrot is telling us to perceive that situation, how to interpret that situation. So if it's very blaming language, or if it's very self-critical language, etc. Very sort of worrying about the future, all of those type of things. And then once we've personified and we've identified the critical voices, we can then create something to counteract that. So we might have a positive parrot voice, or I worked with a client recently who created a wise owl that sat on the other shoulder and sort of said in her other ear, okay, so if that's one way of interpreting the situation, this might be another way. So challenging those negative thoughts are really, really helpful.
Okay. Do you actually like make the parrot speak and stuff?
You can do, yeah. It's incredible actually how children will speak to parrots.
So what do you do? Do you like sort of... Oh, okay, I forgot it makes that noise.
He makes a lovely noise.
So do you actually get the parrot to speak? Like, do you do like the role play and stuff like that?
Yeah, and we have lots of fun with it, and we get the children to name the parrot as well. And you know, so I might sort of describe the different parrots, or the blame the parrot, or you know, whatever, and then they'll create their own name for their own parrot. So that's really good fun. Okay. So then we start to sort of challenge the critical voice with some affirmations and some positive thinking cards. So here are some little examples, and what we do with the affirmation cards is, and here is just one example. So I've got one here that just says I can do it, which is really nice. That's nice. And on the other side I have courage. Yeah. And there are lots of different ones in here. I am safe, and I accept and love myself. And the idea is that, particularly if we have low or wobbly self-esteem, it might be quite difficult to look in the mirror for some of us. And so probably one of the few times we look in the mirror is when we brush our teeth. Yeah. And so one of the strategies I give families is, when we're brushing our teeth, to say our positive affirmation 3 times whilst we're brushing our teeth, in the morning and in the evening. Nice. And it's just about trying to sort of challenge and reframe those negative parrot voices. Okay. So that's the sort of the stuff sort of around that.
Can you get around the other stuff in 10 seconds?
I can. Happy jars are great. So a great way of collecting. The happy jar. So we create all of those lovely magic moments, the things that cause us to feel good, and we can collect them over a whole year or over a month, and then revisit them, do it as a family or as individuals. That's nice. Lovely books around filling our bucket and our self-esteem, in sort of the terms of a bucket that we can fill or dip. Okay. And it's a beautiful story about how we can fill our bucket, or how we can dip from our bucket, which is really nice. And this one, which is lovely, which is a little box of things that cause us to feel good. And this is one that I had for my son for when he was really little. So inside your magic box are all the things that give you sort of those warm, fuzzy feelings. So it might be a photograph of a special holiday, or of a special toy, or something you were collecting, or some birthday confetti, which is really lovely.
Oh, that's lovely, Sharon.
And finally, have I got time for one more thing?
Yeah, go on then. I know I've gone over time, guys.
Sorry. And for me, this is big. So looking at those innate strengths. So when we actually get a lot of our affirmation from external sources, what we want is our children to look for the inner stuff. So this is all about looking at our positive inner strengths. Lovely. Which is really important.
So nice. So very positive, Sharon. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Do you want to do the link to break? I think he wants to do the link to break. Okay, so after the break, we'll be seeing the real life stories of 2 children who manage a problem they are going through in different ways. One has, I'm eating the sorry. One has severe allergies and hasn't let that stop him from being happy. And the other one shares how he copes with anxiety. So don't go away. Welcome back to today's programme, everyone, which is all about children's issues such as anxiety, eating disorders and self-esteem. Now, children go through difficult situations too, and now we're going to look at 2 real-life stories of a 9-year-old with multiple allergies and a 12-year-old with anxiety. How do they manage their conditions? Let's start with 9-year-old Daniel's story. All right, so we have Sarah and Daniel here.
Hello.
Hi. So, Sarah, tell us about your experience so far, because Daniel has some allergies, don't you, sweetheart?
Yeah.
Can you tell us what you're allergic to?
Well, I'm allergic to quite a big variety of things. Allergic to peas, lentils, nuts, sesame seeds, poppy seeds.
Mustard.
Mustard.
Wow.
Dairy.
Dairy, eggs,
Pine nuts.
pine nuts.
Quite a few things then.
And also animals.
Animals
Yeah.
as well. Oh, so
And
you can't
animals.
have pets then.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. So when did you actually discover that you had all these
I
allergies?
don't really know.
You don't remember?
No, he was about
Yeah.
3 months old.
Oh,
So he
really?
was very young indeed.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
So what was it that you noticed? What happened that first time?
Well, it started off, it looked like eczema, but obviously it wasn't eczema. It was a reaction to cow's milk. So that was sort of on our journey of discovery. I didn't expect when he was tested for what I did think would probably be an allergy to cow's milk, that in fact they were going to tell me he was going to be allergic to lots of other things as well.
Okay.
And then some of the other allergens we have just found out through a process of mistakes that have been made,
really?
obviously. Yes.
Okay.
Well, obviously you can't test for everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So how do you manage at home then? Because there's quite a few different allergies
Yes.
there, so it must be quite challenging for you to organise the fridge and the cupboards.
It is. I mean, Daniel now is 9.5, so, you know, we've lived with this for 9 years.
Yeah.
Over the course of the 9 years, of course, you become quite organised about things.
I can imagine.
You find which ingredients suit you, which ingredients don't suit you, and of course, what's in my store cupboards now is things that I know that he's okay with.
Have you changed
So-
your diet as well then? Like,
I suppose to some extent, but not hugely. I have to say I do keep in the house things that he is allergic to, but he recognises nuts and dairy products and he doesn't touch them. I mean, he has never had a reaction because he has chosen to eat something that he shouldn't eat.
Okay.
If he's had a reaction, it's because of somebody else's mistake, not because of his.
And what's that like, for example, when you go out to restaurants and stuff? Do you go out to restaurants much?
Yeah.
Yeah, and how do you
Go out
manage that
quite
with the allergies?
Well, we tell the waiter what I'm allergic to.
Do you give them that list?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we tell them to write it down, or my mum writes it down. And then they give that to the chef, which the chef will usually look at and not put those ingredients into the food.
So it's really nice that it hasn't put you off from going out and just living life normally, right?
Yeah.
Where do you like to eat? What
like
kind of
to
stuff?
eat-
What kind of food do you like?
I like pizza, I like burgers, I like Lebanese food.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Why do you like Lebanese food?
Quite like the shawarmas.
Ooh. Okay, so likes a variety of things.
Oh, yes.
I like the pickles as well.
Daniel, what do your friends say? Do they know about the allergies and what do they say about it?
Well, they don't say much, but when there's like a dog around, or then maybe there's something I'm allergic to, they say, are you allergic to this? Or could you read the ingredients if you're allowed it? And if
So they're quite helpful then?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. You've got some good friends then. Okay. Now tell us about that thing that you've got around your waist and your wrist as well. What's that for?
Well, the thing on my wrist is a sort of allergy bracelet, which if you turn the metal bit over, it tells you what I'm allergic to.
Okay. And you have to wear that all the time?
Yeah, and it's a sort of list.
Yeah,
There's
okay.
a phone number on it.
It's a phone number as well. And what's inside the little bag there?
Well, there's some
Sorry, girls, I'm having a conversation with Daniel here.
sort of EpiPens in there. There's some antihistamines and there's an inhaler.
Okay.
And
And that's what you have to keep with you all the time as well?
And not often do we use the EpiPen. It tends to just be the
other stuff.
antihistamine.
Okay. So Daniel, can I ask you another question? What do you want to be when you grow up?
I haven't really thought of that yet, but I quite like to be a politician.
Really?
Yeah.
Mum, did you know this?
Yeah, I don't know what to say, I'm speechless. Yeah.
Or a rugby player.
Okay, which one out of the two? Which one do you prefer? Should you say?
I'd probably say politician.
Okay, all right, that's cool. And also, if there's other like kids watching now and they have like some allergies and they're feeling a little bit sad and a little bit down, what would you say to them? How would you make them happy?
I'd probably say they need to man up a bit, and they need to start to read the ingredients themselves and not rely on their parents to do it.
All right.
And they need to watch out for stuff they're allergic to.
But it doesn't stop them from living life, does it? Because it hasn't stopped you. You're getting on with things, you're strong, you're looking forward to your future.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? Brilliant. I think you're amazing, my darling. So great advice there from Daniel about manning up. So now let's take a look at 12-year-old Sean's battle with anxiety.
Sean was and is always a very easy child, except for when he gets stressed, and then you deal with that.
Having anxiety is definitely like a hard situation. Just like wanting to go away and wanting everything to stop and just kind of like crawl into like a dark hole and then like have everything just be over with kind of thing.
Sean is a perfectionist with everything. For example, it takes him 4 times longer to do his homework than it might take anyone else because he has to form everything just perfectly. Getting dressed, for example, everything has to be just right, and he's very precise about the way things feel on his body. Whether it's shoes, or a shirt, or his socks, they have to feel a certain way, or he'll take them off and not wear them.
Good job.
My parents remind me on a regular basis that I don't have to be perfect, but I just can't help but thinking that I didn't do well enough.
We chose to move east after having lived in Montana for 8 years. And we found Lebanon, Pennsylvania. It's a nice place, it's beautiful, it's rural, but it's close to cities.
I know, but they want to separate that section.
Honestly, I think we've always known that Sean's had anxiety issues, but then after moving to Pennsylvania and starting 6th grade, he had a really, really rough go of it. Partially because a lot of the natural accommodations that had been made for him in his previous school couldn't be made for him here because we didn't have paperwork. They kind of had to treat him the same as every other child. But he does have specific needs. And so we found Dr. Grissellano.
Anxiety is irrational. You know, it supersedes the rational. So if you can reframe what you're anxious about, sometimes it's possible to say, you know what, I'm not thinking about that in quite a rational way. And then also to use and teach coping strategies that can help bring about behavioral change that makes it a little bit easier.
Therapy definitely helps me with my anxiety because we can talk about worst case scenarios that probably won't happen, best case scenarios that probably won't happen, then kind of in the middle, which will probably happen.
Hey Sean, ready for you?
I really like Miss Stephanie. I feel like I can always talk about things with her that I wouldn't normally say.
Now, your mom had mentioned something about playing a game in math.
Oh, yeah. My teacher calls it the 24 challenge, and it's a mental math game where you have to add, subtract, divide, and multiply all of those numbers in order to get to 24, and you have to use all of them. Mm-hmm. I'm not very good at that, mainly because other people are just faster when it comes to mental math. Mm-hmm. And the same thing, I get stressed and stuff to the point where I can't think and stuff. And after I get a certain amount behind, it's just kind of like, why bother?
Wow, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure in that moment.
Since working with the Grisolano Center, Sean has become much more confident and self-aware and feels like he has a right to say no to things and to ask for things that he needs. So, for example, if he needs to leave class because it's just too overwhelming, he knows that he can.
So, Sean, well, let's talk about dance for a little bit. Just tell me what dance means to you.
Dancing, I can just use it as an outlet to let out my feelings. It just feels really good to just kind of expose myself to something a little bit different.
Some people maybe go for a run when they're upset. He dances. Dance in the backyard, or he'll dance on the streets.
Dance is a very beneficial supplement to Sean's therapy, a very liberating activity for him emotionally.
It's the motivational tool for Sean to continue in any efforts that are outside of the dance classroom.
To just continue pushing himself, getting better than he was before, and finding new things to get better at. Dancing really became the way for him to deal with his anxiety and his uniqueness.
Sean will look at himself and say, I can do this. I have conquered this. And if I can conquer this fear, what else do I have to fear?
When I watch Sean dance, I feel like he is whole, and I feel like I have been able to help him find what makes him happy and what fills his heart.
That was a really touching story, and I'd like to thank the Mental Health Channel for allowing us to use that video covering Sean's story on our show today. And if you'd like to know more about the Mental Health Channel, please visit our website, chrissybshow.tv, and click on Contributors. After the break, I'll be speaking to Dr Nihara Krause about the alarming issue of children and eating disorders. And we'll also be revisiting an activity great to keep kids active and occupied, which is of course great for their mental health, and that's the High Line at the Rock Reef Activity Centre. So don't go away. Hi, I'm Chrissy B, and my show is all about improving your mental health and being happy. Join me every Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 10 p.m. on my channel Sky 203. Visit chrissybshow.tv for more information and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Chrissy B Show. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Chrissy B Show and on our Facebook page, The Chrissy B Show. Welcome back to today's programme, which is all about children's issues, and today we're concentrating on anxiety, eating disorders and self-esteem. So I have joining me now Dr Nihara Krause, who we haven't seen for a while in the actual studio, but we've had you on Skype, haven't we?
It's lovely to be here.
Lovely to have you back.
Yes.
Always love your input to the topics
Thank
that we
you.
have.
Thank you.
So we're talking about, first of all, we're talking about the eating disorders, but you did watch Sean's story as well about the anxiety. What did you think of that?
I thought it's a really great description, really, of a different way of dealing with anxiety. First of all, anxiety is very, very common. It's the most common condition that affects both children and adults. and it can affect you in lots of different ways. So I think Sean had sort of, he needed to order things, and he had a whole load of worries that troubled him. But I thought what was amazing was that he had this ability to dance his troubles and his worries away and to express himself. It was actually about finding an alternative form of expression. And I think that's kind of one of the important things, I think, when you work in the field of mental health, is find your own way to express yourself. Don't worry about what it is. Just find it and do it.
Yeah. And everyone has that somewhere that they just have to discover what it is.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so let's talk about eating disorders now, because it is quite alarming to know that more and more children are going through this problem. How does it all start?
Well, it's quite a complex pattern, really. In terms of starting, first of all, I think we must separate out very common eating problems in childhood. So, if you're a fussy eater, if you don't like eating certain types of food, that isn't an eating disorder. So eating disorders are very specific. They fall into 3 categories. They're anorexia, bulimia, and binge eating disorder. Very young children do develop eating disorders, and it would seem as though usually that's connected with something unpleasant and out of control that children experience. So it might be some sort of trauma, it might be a loss, it might be being bullied, it might be having low self-esteem, but it then tends to help to almost help the child deal with that difficulty in some way. And we also mustn't separate out the very confusing messages that children get, whether that's from the media, whether that's from friends. I think some recent research has shown that over 50% of children in primary school either have been on a diet or want to be on a diet.
Really?
Yes.
Oh God, that's crazy.
So that's, that's really concerning.
Yeah. But then how would, with the younger kids, how would a parent identify whether it's fussy eating or an eating disorder? How would they know?
Well, again, I think you'd look at the developmental level of the child, and it is really quite hard because children's appetite and nutrition needs will change depending on whether they're going through a growth spurt or not, for example, or their age. But usually, if there are consistent changes in terms of what they eat, if they are changing in terms of their weight, and that weight change is a negative one, not expected at the time of their growth, if they seem to be avoiding eating with others, if they're saying very negative comments very much based upon their weight and their shape and about others, then those would be signs to look out for.
That's really good to know, actually.
Yes, and I think the really important thing to think about is that eating disorders are not about food. They're about underlying emotions. Eating disorders are about emotions. And so that's the kind of biggest clue in, parents sort of trying to observe.
It is a delicate subject to approach with children. So what would you say is the best way for a parent to address an issue with a child if they have maybe noticed something but they're not quite sure?
I would just, generally keep your communication going. So just strike up a conversation about all sorts of things, just find out how they are and really try and find out whether they might be troubled about something. So again, it's sort of getting to that emotional level. And, you might say, well, I've noticed that perhaps you're not, you've been, perhaps not always joining us for a meal. Just wondered, whether there was anything that way around. So be tentative. Don't appear to be cross, because that's the very thing that children will then avoid, talking about. Be encouraging and be prepared to hear things you don't like to hear, but be open to hearing more. So keep the communication going and then help them to start to think about perhaps alternatives. So provide them with alternatives rather than saying, no, well, that's it then. That's the very thing you're going to have.
Oh, so, right, okay.
Yes.
Not good.
No.
And when is it time to get professional help, Nihara?
Again, I think that if you see any physical changes, and with children, it's very, very important to pick that up early. If you start to notice any physical changes, if your child has started to withdraw a bit from their friendship groups, if you have any concerns anyway, it's never a problem to go and get some advice, really. And you might want to go on your own, go and see your GP on your own if you want to, or another health professional. But just find out, and also ask other parents and just see whether their children are doing the same or different. You can sort of get a bit of a feel about it.
Okay. And in terms of treatment available for children?
Well, there's lots of treatment, but I think with parents, I think it's also important to really think about prevention, you know, first and foremost. So there's lots of things you can do on the eating front. First of all, don't have good and bad categories of food. So, you know, try and have everything there. Encourage children to eat. Make sure you keep sort of family routines. You know, have breakfast together if you can, even though it's busy time. Have meals together. Try to make meal times pleasant rather than the only time that the family has a row, for example. Watch your own eating patterns. It's very common for eating disorders to run in families, and if you are a picky eater or a choosy eater, or if you avoid food, then you need to face up to that, because children will be open to that.
Again, that's so interesting. It's like the self-esteem issues we were talking earlier. The parents just lead by example, don't they?
Well, absolutely. You are the role model, and you know that'd be really important, and it's by what you do. Far more than what you say sometimes. So, you know, just have a think about that. Also treat your child, you know, get to know your child as a whole. So give them messages about themselves as people rather than based on the way they look, for example. Be careful of not always commenting on other people's weight or shape, and give them the opportunity to express themselves in a variety of different ways, as we saw from that film. You know, just think about how you might, you know, give them tools to communicate things if they're troubled by
I'm
whatever.
learning a lot on today's show. It's really been handy. I'm sure the parents out there are just lapping all this up because it's just very useful. Right, so we've got just a couple of minutes left, Nihara, but if like maybe the prevention hasn't worked.
And treatment available. There's lots of different treatment. Go and see your GP first, because they will be able to give your child a health check, make sure that they're well health-wise, because psychological treatment will only work at best when your child's health is well. If they are very, very unhealthy, you know, kind of the health is suffering, then they need to be able to be boosted in that way. The help is a combination of nutritional help, so they do need to learn to eat well, alongside psychological help. And there's plenty of very, very good treatment techniques available. And I can't stress enough, as I always say on this show, get help early, because you can make enormous change if you can do things soon.
Definitely. Nihara, it's been great having you on the show as usual. Thank you so much for that.
You.
It was brilliant.
Thank you.
All right, guys, so now before we go to the break, we do have a video for you of a nice activity that can keep kids occupied and also very fit. So let's take a look.
Hi Chris, we're really sorry you can't be with us. I'm with Leanna here, and right now we're at the Rock Reef Activity Centre here in Bournemouth, and we're joined by the lovely Fee Selwood, who's the manager at Rock Reef, and our lovely instructor, Natalie. So ladies, what are we doing?
So we're going to start with the high line. So we're going to get you clipped on and you'll go around the course, so you'll see behind us. So we'll get them stuck in on that.
Yay, excited, let's go.
Oh my goodness, my heart is like...
So we've just completed the Highline activity behind us here at Rock Reef Activity Centre at Bournemouth, and hopefully you saw how hard that was. That was crazy.
It was so hard, but you know what? It was an adrenaline rush. Almost times I thought I saw the tears forming up because I was just like, it's too high. I can't do this. I can't do this. But you know what? We mustered through it. It was a really good, really good activity, upper body strength, and it was just amazing. Very good. Thank you guys so much.
You're welcome. Well, thank you very much, ladies, for your time, and back to you, Chris, in the studio.
Well, after the break, we have Danielle Shine with a healthy and easy recipe for nut butter, which is great for children and adults alike. And I'll be sharing 6 things that my parents did that helped me to have a high self-esteem. Welcome back to today's program, and we've been speaking about children's mental health issues, and we've covered anxiety, eating disorders and self-esteem. And this show really has been very important for parents because sometimes signs can be quite difficult to spot. So I believe this program has given lots of hints and tips to parents, and also how to actually help your child if they are going through anything. And if you have missed the beginning of the show, don't worry, you can head over to our YouTube channel, Chrissy B Show, and you'll catch the show there in a few days' time. And don't forget to subscribe, because we've actually updated our YouTube channel recently. You're going to find lots of different things, not just stuff that we've had on the show, but other things as well, like healthy nutritional tips, fitness tips. We've got a psychology section. We've got lots of different playlists for you, all aimed at helping your mental health and well-being. So do go there and enjoy what you find, because we're working very hard to keep you updated. All right, so now I'm going to be speaking about 6 things that my parents did that actually led me to feel very confident as a child and to have good self-esteem. Obviously, I did have my wobbly moments. The word wobbly I got from Sharon, but when I got older, but as a child, I was actually doing very well. So the first point, something that they always did was show me lots of love and affection. So there was always times for hugs, there was always times for kisses. They always used to tell me that they loved me. Anytime that, for example, I would go to, actually my dad used to take me to school every day and pick me up after school. Okay, when I got older, that was a bit embarrassing, but when I was a child, it was really nice. And always just there for me all the time, and making, even though they worked near enough, I think sometimes 7 days a week from home though, sometimes usually 6 days a week, but there was always a time when they would stop, and if it was a weekend, we would always have lunch together. We would always have dinner together as a family, sitting around the table. So it wasn't just the physical love and attention, it was actually that the affection, sorry, it was actually the attention that we used to get. So there was always time when we would talk every single day, would have a laugh, would mess around, and that always helped me to feel secure within the home. The second thing that they did, mainly my dad, I would say, was to instill discipline in the house. So I always knew where I stood, and I did feel safe in the home environment. And you know, there were clear boundaries. I knew, for example, what I was allowed to do, what I wasn't allowed to do. Though my dad was very strict, but as I said, because he also showed that love and that affection, the discipline, I was okay with the discipline when I was younger. And it actually made me feel safe, because I think many mistakes that parents make sometimes nowadays is that they want to be friends with their children, which is fine to an extent, but you can't forget that you also need to discipline them, because children feel very insecure when they're just allowed to do anything they want. And it might seem, yeah, but I want my child to enjoy being with me, I want my child to love me, but actually it's quite damaging to a child when there are no clear boundaries set for what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. And then if they do something that's naughty, then they're not disciplined properly. So that was something that did make me feel very secure within the home. My third point that I would like to raise, that my parents always instilled, they always gave me responsibilities, even when I was very young, for myself and my sister. So we felt quite trusted, because, for example, we were the ones that did the weekly grocery shop. So we would go to the shop, we'd get all the things, choose all the groceries, we had a list to follow, and then my dad would pick us up after we gave him a certain time, he would pick us up. And we had our cleaning responsibilities, which I didn't always enjoy, I have to admit, but I am glad we had those as children, because then we learned how to, keep a home as we got older. We used to help with the cooking as well. And something that I also was quite thankful for as well, as I said, my parents used to work from home, and even with their work, they trusted us to actually help sort of cutting the threads off because they used to make clothes, cutting the threads off the clothes and kind of quality control and all of that stuff. And I think that actually led me to, in my adult years, to actually have quite a good eye for detail, because I was working on those kind of things when I was quite young. It did really help. So the fact that they trusted me with things like that really helped my self-esteem. The fourth point is pocket money. Again, I was trusted with pocket money, so it did make me feel grown up and that, you know, I had responsibilities. And my dad never asked me, for example, what I was doing with the money. He would just give me the pocket money. My mum would give me the money, and I was just, you know, free to do whatever I wanted with it, and which was really nice. And I know sometimes this is an issue with some parents. They think, oh, I shouldn't just give my child pocket money, but you can maybe use it as a reward for something, or, you know, just that kind of responsibility to have your own money is a good thing, I think. And the fifth point, socializing. So there was plenty of socializing within my family, and, you know, we were always having family members around and neighbors around, so I learned to be hospitable. You know, I was kind of like, in a sense, I was kind of forced to, because of all the people that were always in and out of the house, and obviously we would go to people's houses as well. We learned to talk to people, we learned to socialize, we learned not to be afraid around people. So I think that does help a child to develop socially. If you as a parent are very withdrawn and you don't like to see people, you don't like to talk to people, as we heard earlier, the children will copy that. And they will start to maybe kind of be a bit, oh, I don't want to talk to that person. I feel a bit nervous to do this or do that. And it's not healthy for them. But if they see their parents talking to people, being friendly, being hospitable, they will pick up on those things, and they will, I think, be more rounded, better rounded adults in later life. And then I have my sixth point, which is that my parents were very good examples. So very good marriage for I think their marriage was 42 years until my dad died a couple of years ago. So they were always like, you know, got on really well. Okay, everyone has their ups and downs, they had their arguments, but I have good memories. I have memories of them messing around a lot, chasing each other around the house, and some things that I can't say, funny things. And that for me was nice, because it kind of showed me that, you know, relationships can be really good. Also, they were very responsible concerning money. I remember when my dad used to be handed his, back then it was in wage packets. I don't know if you remember those little brown envelopes, the wage packets. And I would watch them. They would sit down at a table and they would actually count out what was for bills, what was for food. And I got a lot from that. I kind of adopted those kind of habits when I got older. They weren't in debt. They paid their bills on time. And so I also adopted that because I used to watch the way they used to do it. So always, there were always good examples. They were very hardworking and organized. So these are all things that, because I saw these kind of things, it all sort of boils down to the security. I knew that I had good parents. I knew that what I was learning from them was good, and that affected my self-esteem as a child, but in a good way. All right, so those are my 6 points. Now, before we go, guys, we also have something from Danielle Shine for you, and a lovely recipe that you can actually even make with your children. And everything that Danielle Shine cooks actually is very, very healthy. There's no nasties in there. It helps for, to have a healthy body and mind, actually, which is also very good for children and adults. So let's take a look at this recipe.
Hi everyone, I'm really excited to be here to show you how to make your own nut butter today. Nut butter is so good for you, a fantastic source of healthy fats, and all you have to do is choose your favorite nuts. I'm starting off with 3 cups, 1 cup of cashews, 1 cup of almonds, and 1 cup of walnuts, my favorite nut. And then I've got a 1/4 teaspoon of cloves, which is a great antimicrobial spice. I've got 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, which is fantastic for the digestive system. And then I go a little bit bigger and I've got a teaspoon of cinnamon. You can put more or less, it's up to you, but cinnamon is fantastic for lowering blood sugar levels. Okay, so before we get started, we're just gonna add a little bit of coconut oil, which is a great source of healthy fats as well. I like to use at least 1 tablespoon. You can go ahead and add 2 if you'd like. And I'm gonna add 1 tablespoon of a fantastic natural sweetener, honey. You don't have to use honey, you can leave it out completely, or you can try brown rice syrup or maple syrup. It also tastes amazing. So that is how easy it is. Lid on, and we're gonna blend until it's nice and smooth. So I like to keep my nut butter in jars just because it keeps it fresher for longer, and always seal it with a really good lid. It keeps for up to about a month in the fridge or in a cool pantry. If it lasts that long, I doubt that it will. Never lasts that long in my household. And once you get used to making this nut butter, you can then really have a lot of fun. So each time you make it, use some different nuts, use some different natural sweeteners, maybe use no natural sweetener at all, different spices. It's just so much fun to play around with. And it's also so great and healthy for you. Okay, so last thing left is a lid. And there you have it, your own homemade nut butter. Super simple. I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you next time.
So thank you very much to Danielle. And just to let you know, again, on our YouTube channel, we have a playlist with all our recipes from Danielle Shine, from Hannah Richards and Ben Cooper. And I have to say, I have been trying out some of the recipes and they are delicious. And it's great to know that they're actually packed full of nutrients, which are great for our physical and mental health. Well, we have reached the end of today's program, everyone, but if you have a story that you would like to share on this program, or if you're a professional and you'd like to give some advice to our viewers, a charity perhaps that are helping people in some way, then do get in touch with us. You can visit our website, chrissybshow.tv. You can also tweet us at chrissybshow or leave a message on our Facebook page, The Chrissy B Show. And if you'd like to know more about me and how I overcame depression and panic attacks, anxiety, low self-esteem in adult life, and all sorts of other issues that I had, do visit my website, mylifeafterdepression.com. Until next time, bye for now. We're helping people, there you go. Have not had appropriate interventions at a... Oh my God, start again, sorry. Can't read today. Alarmingly, however, 70% of children and young people who experience a mental health problem have not had appropriate interventions at a sufficiently... It's too many hard words in one go. At a sufficiently early age. One has severe allergies and that hasn't stopped him from leading a shut up. And we'll also be giving tips on how to raise it. And we also have clinical on our show today. And if you'd like to know more children's issues, especially with mental health, and that's, can I start again?